Discover the incredible moment a lonely CEO exposed a shivering nurse and her baby at a bus stop. Elizabeth stood at the bus stop, arms crossed tightly around her baby tucked into her parka, trying to shield the little one from the biting winter wind. Each gust cut through her thin scrubs, leaving her exposed and vulnerable amid the bustling chaos of Chicago. As she shifted her weight from foot to foot, the pile of unpaid bills felt heavier than the child she cradled. Can I truly pull through this? With a job that often felt like a thankless grind, she questioned how long she could sustain this life of service without proper recognition or compensation. Each day in the hospital saw her give everything, yet the sacrifices faded into obscurity. Just then, a sleek luxury car whisked past, perhaps not unlike the life Elizabeth often fantasized about. Her heart sank. The juxtaposition of her reality and the image of endless wealth reminded her of the bitter truths she tried to bury. The sound of the car engine faded into the background, but the noise of her mind kept raging, overflowing with doubts about her capacity to provide. What kind of mother will I be if I can't make ends meet? Before she could spiral deeper, she caught a fleeting glimpse of the driver, a middle-aged man, Mark, with a tightly drawn face and distracted eyes that rarely took in the world outside of his corporate bubble. He was too engrossed in his life of mergers and acquisitions, his mind racing from one deal to the next. But as he glanced toward her, a flicker of recognition crossed his features, something primal sparking in his gut. And for the first time in years, guilt wormed its way through his carefully constructed walls. The image of Elizabeth standing there, breath vaporizing in the frigid air, tugged on something within him. Watching her, the weight of his ambitions felt suddenly trivial, encased in luxury and affluence, unaware of the struggles he was blind to outside his tinted windows. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As if drawn by an invisible thread, Mark pulled over, glancing at the encroaching storm of thoughts that clouded his mind. This was new territory. Engagement with someone outside his socio-economic bracket was carefully trained out of him through years of networking and status. Uncertainty gripped him. What could he possibly offer her? A loan? An empty promise? Just the recognition of his social advantage? The interns who had just finished their own shifts filtered nearby, eyes widening as their boss engaged with Elizabeth. They recognized the divide, the privilege, the relentless nature of the system that placed him in a car and her at a bus stop. They were silent but observant, their gazes filled with unspoken questions about responsibility and empathy. Mark faced them, the tension palpable on his skin. Was he willing to confront his own privilege today? The weight of the moment pressed down on him, while Elizabeth remained oblivious to the swirls of turmoil in his mind. All she could feel was the freezing wind seeping deeper into her bones, her heart clenching tighter around a failure she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge. As snow began to flutter down, the world around them dulled, heightening the swirling thoughts in both their minds. Would he step into her struggle or retreat back into his insulated life? The impending charity gala demanded his attention, offering a choice that twisted painfully in his gut. As the night approached, it became more than a social obligation. It was a crucible moment for both their futures. Eternally entwined in uncertainty. Would he redefine his legacy or retreat back into complacent indifference? A decision loomed, as heavy as the snow piling on the ground, leaving Elizabeth, in stark contrast, at the mercy of an unresolved fate. Elizabeth's thoughts raced, a torrent of insecurities drowning out any hope she might hold on to. The cold was numbing, yet it mirrored something deeper within her, an ache for stability and acknowledgement. With every second spent standing there, she felt the stark reality of her circumstance clawing at her spirit. Yet even as she sank further into this mental fog, a small seed of determination began to take root. She had faced challenges before. But would this moment be the catalyst for something bigger? Mark's presence lingered in her periphery, the tension around him palpable. The cold air morphed into a heavy silence, broken only by the low rumble of distant car engines and the soft whimper of her baby, still naive to the gravity of the situation. She gently rocked the child, contemplating the myriad paths this encounter could take. In the face of uncertainty, could she dare to hope for change in her life? For Mark, every moment of hesitation felt like a countdown to a decision he couldn't afford to ignore. Engulfed in guilt, he peered at Elizabeth, her vulnerability a stark reminder of the world he often navigated without acknowledgement. What if this wasn't about a mere transaction or obligation? The thought gnawed at him, tantalizing yet terrifying. His gaze drifted beyond her, brushing against the interns who observed with a mixture of intrigue and trepidation. Could he illustrate change, both for them and for himself? The weight of his role as CEO echoed fiercely in this moment. If he chose to ignore her plight once more, was he not reinforcing the same inequalities he had spent years climbing beyond? Elizabeth's eyes, even with their shadowed resolve, sparked a different sense of recognition within him, one that challenged his assumptions, provoking an introspection he had long evaded. As the wind howled, swirling flakes of snow around her, Elizabeth's small act of defiance standing there despite the chill began to serve as a bold reminder of the strength hidden within struggle. Caught in this exchange, something shifted. Mark opened the door to his car, the cold air rushing in, collapsing the space between them. "Are you okay?" His voice broke through the stillness, words tumbling awkwardly from his lips like ice thawing in spring. The question hung heavily. Elizabeth faced him, the question pressing against her uncertainty like an anchor. Could she articulate her truth without striping herself of dignity? As she inhaled sharply, gathering her fortitude, she felt a swell of emotions battling within. It wasn't just about her physical needs, it was about reclaiming her identity, her voice in a world that tried to render her silent. "I am struggling," Elizabeth finally admitted, her voice wavering yet resolute. The statement felt liberating. She could no longer be merely a dot in the background of society's grand scheme. She was a mother, a provider, a person fighting for her worth. As Mark absorbed her words, the world narrowed to this exchange, and a realization struck him. There was a bridge between them, forged through mutual humanity. If he was willing to embrace his privilege, was it possible for him to recalibrate his purpose? Meanwhile, Elizabeth felt a flicker of power in her vulnerability. This was not just a plea for help, it could be the dawning of an alliance, a chance to redefine both their legacies. A slow, deliberate resolve began to fill her. Perhaps this moment could lead to more, a connection that would serve the dual purpose of change and awakening. "Let us talk," he offered, gesturing as if the offer itself could be an act of redemption, not just for her but for himself as well. As they began to navigate the places within themselves and the external realities tethered to them, the relentless wind whispered promises of transformation and choices waited. For one beneath the weight of privilege might challenge his beliefs while another could find her strength in a newfound dialogue. What consequences would this connection bear for both their futures? The evening air crackled with unknown possibilities as they took tentative steps towards a shared path, yet doubts loomed large. Would their intertwining journeys lead to empowerment or despair? Elizabeth took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily upon her shoulders. The warmth of Mark's vehicle beckoned, yet the churning tide of emotions left her unsure. Stepping toward the open door felt monumental, a deviation from the ordinary, perhaps even a step onto a precarious tightrope. As she got into the car, the rush of heated air enveloped her momentarily, contrasting sharply with the biting cold she had just endured. It was a cocoon, yet still felt exposed. Her baby cooed from her arms, blissfully unaware of the shifting dynamics. Somehow, this was more than a rescue, it was an uncharted territory filled with unease and potential. Mark glanced at her, his expression a mosaic of guilt and curiosity. "I appreciate you saying that," he began, his voice faltering slightly as if fumbling for the right words. "Most people, when faced with hardship, they usually hide it. But you didn't." He authenticated his compliment with a deep sense of admiration. And that was her strength, wasn't it? Elizabeth pondered. To voice her struggles openly was a defiance against a system that revered silence in vulnerability. She was roused by the idea that her truth could be acknowledged could ignite something profound in Mark, too. "I didn't have a choice," she countered, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Pretending everything's fine only perpetuates the cycle." The words spilled out with an intensity she hadn't anticipated. Mark nodded, a flicker of something unnameable crossing his features. "You're right. It's sickening to realize how many people make excuses, avoiding discomfort at all cost." There was a vulnerability in him stripped bare of his usual CEO facade. Elizabeth could feel the tremors beneath them, the societal constructs cracking, and with it, the birth of a new possibility, a potential for impact fueled by their collective vulnerabilities. "What do you want to achieve?" Mark asked pointedly, tapping into the urgency of the moment. A plethora of answers swirled in Elizabeth's mind, but clarity had yet to fully form. I want a future. For myself, for my child. But more than that, I want to unshackle others from silence." As she spoke, she began to weave her words with a thread of hope, envisioning a life that transcended mere survival. Mark listened, cataloging her vision while grappling with the realization of his latent influence. He had spent years upwardly climbing, and for what? To retain his position while allowing others to succumb to the shadows? "Maybe we can do something together," he suggested, eyes intense. "Businesses have the means to create change, real change." Elizabeth's heart raced at the invitation. What if treating her battle as a collective journey could serve a purpose beyond personal struggle? The world was vast, yet she was face to face with an opportunity to merge her resolve with his reach. "What did you have in mind?" She leaned forward, a spark igniting within her. "I don't know yet, but perhaps I need to listen more. Understand the implications of my decisions on people like you." He paused, wrestling with the gravity of his past. "This is just the beginning, right?" It was. A foundation lived beneath their shared dialogue, and with it, the potential for an alliance. The possibility was dizzying, resonating with the silent promise that echoed in her heart. As they blanketed this new ground, suddenly doubts ebbed back in shivers of reality that loomed larger with every heartbeat. What kind of resistance awaited them? Would they be acceptors of change, or would their attempts amount to hollow gestures swallowed by the tide? "Are we even equipped for this?" Elizabeth whispered, vulnerability creeping back as she exhaled the heat of uncertainty. The moment lingered, charged with unspoken challenges. Something must shift if they were to pursue this path, yet clarity slipped through their fingers like grains of sand. Just then, Mark's phone buzzed, breaking the intensity. As he glanced down, a frown creased his forehead, indicating an urgent message. They both understood that their conversation, and the commitment forming within it, had only just begun. What awaited them on this treacherous new path, where commitment, vulnerability, and ambition entwined? The answer beckoned, lingering just out of reach. The hum of the engine filled the silence as Mark read the message, tension crackling in the air. Elizabeth watched him, her heart racing. Here was a man accustomed to making decisions on a grand scale, his world a whirlwind of boardroom negotiations and corporate strategy. Yet beneath his polished exterior, she sensed an internal struggle, a flicker of uncertainty that mirrored her own. "What is it?" she asked cautiously, her voice a delicate note amidst the gravity of the moment. Mark's gaze shifted from the phone to her, the guilt returning like a haunting specter. "It's work-related," he replied, swallowing hard. "I need to take this." As he turned his attention to the screen, Elizabeth's mind swirled. Was this the moment when their freshly forged connection could be tested? The stakes felt even higher now, as if she were teetering on the edge of a precipice. Would he choose to remain present with her, or would the demands of his corporate life pull him under? Through the brief silence, she pondered her own choices. This car ride was a choice in itself, a leap into uncertainty, away from the familiar cycle of hardship. She had always navigated her struggles alone, but now she was stepping onto a path that demanded collaboration. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. "Elizabeth?" Mark's voice broke through her reverie. "I'm sorry, but I really need to respond to this. There was an unmistakable strain behind his words. "Of course," she replied, forcing a calmness into her tone, though her heart sank. She watched him type, the weight of responsibility etched into his features. Would this fleeting moment set a precedent? Would their shared vulnerability be overshadowed by the encumbrances of his corporate obligations? As he finished, he turned to her, his eyes searching for reassurance. "I didn't mean to abandon the conversation," he said, leaning closer. "I want to help. Really." The sincerity in his voice ignited something within her. Elizabeth realized she had the power to redefine this encounter. What if vulnerability could be their strongest bridge? "Mark, I'm not expecting you to fix everything. I just need you to understand that this isn't just a business opportunity. It's personal for me." He nodded, the gravity of her words settling in. "I get that. I do. But I also need to prepare myself. I've been too removed from this kind of reality." Together, they navigated the pathway of their shared honesty, exploring the intersections of their lives, their personal and professional experiences merging in a delicate dance. Elizabeth recognized the transformative potential of their dialogue, examining Mark not just as a businessman but as a human capable of empathy and change. As they continued their back and forth, each interaction peeled back layers of their identities, revealing complexities that had previously remained dormant. Elizabeth could sense that Mark was wrestling with his own demons, much like she was. His struggle against a world expecting machismo and unyielding strength resonated deeply, urging her to find common ground. "What if we harness our fears to fuel our actions?" she suggested, her voice rising with newfound fervor. "What if our difficulties could galvanize us into creating something that matters, something that dismantles the silence?" For a moment, Elizabeth dared to dream. She painted vivid scenarios in her mind, a project that could yield tangible results, one that could help individuals like herself reclaim their narratives. What if, instead of hiding their vulnerabilities, they could elevate them into a powerful message? Mark's expression shifted, a palpable curiosity glimmering in his eyes. "You really believe we can make that happen? That we could change things?" The answer to that question planted itself within her like an anchor. "I know we can try," she said, her heart thrumming with energy. This dialogue was a budding conviction that they could craft a collaboration powerful enough to challenge the status quo, but doubts curled in the back of her mind. Was she asking too much? Would Mark be willing to entangle himself in such a risky venture? As uncertainty lingered like a fog, she felt a boundary on the cusp of being breached. "Elizabeth, I need to ask some hard questions." Mark's tone grew serious as he shifted the conversation. "Are you prepared for what this could mean? For both of us?" Elizabeth's heart raced, the moment hung thick with complexity. She thought about the road ahead filled with hurdles, pressure, and the potential for failure. But equally potent was the promise of triumph. "My entire life has prepared me for this," she breathed, emboldened by her fierceness. Mark's eyes searched hers, a silent agreement echoing between them. Yet, the looming question remained, were they both truly ready to confront the constraints of their realities? As the vehicle rolled forward, a spark of recognition blossomed between them, yet they both knew the journey had only just begun. What vulnerabilities awaited them on this winding road, and would they find the strength to face them together? The car's engine thrummed steadily, a metronome to the cadence of Elizabeth's escalating thoughts. Each street they passed felt like a threshold to uncharted territory. The potential for growth was tantalizing, but would the sturdiness of their collaboration withstand the storms of doubt looming ahead? "Mark, tell me what concerns you," Elizabeth ventured, breaking the pregnant pause. The open road was a blank canvas, and she was determined to paint it with clarity. "I can sense you're struggling with this decision." He hesitated, the flicker of vulnerability evident on his face as he adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. "It's not just about taking a risk," he confessed, his tone laced with a blend of apprehension and hope. "It's about the weight of expectation. My role demands decisive leadership. What if we fail?" Elizabeth took a breath, knowing this was a critical moment of connection. His fears mirrored her own fears of inadequacy. What if we redefine what failure means? She suggested softly. What if we see it as a stepping stone, a part of the journey rather than the end? Mark's gaze remained focused on the road, but a glimmer of contemplation danced in his eyes. You paint a compelling picture, but it's a hurdle I'm not sure I'm ready to jump over. His voice was tinged with disillusionment, revealing layers of his corporate struggles and the relentless pressure to succeed. Everyone faces their hurdles, Mark. I know how it feels to be burdened by expectations, Elizabeth replied, her voice steady yet encouraging. I've faced setbacks that felt insurmountable. But each time, I found a way to rise. We're not alone in this project. If we shield ourselves from the fear of failure, we might discover hidden strengths. Mark's expression shifted, contemplating her words. She could almost see the gears turning behind his reserved facade. Hidden strengths, he repeated, as if testing the phrase for weight. Yes, she pressed. Every struggle brings insight. I can learn from what you've seen in your world, and you can learn from mine. Together, we can craft a vision that resonates because it's rooted in authenticity. He nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing as if a weight had begun to lift. Perhaps it's the fear of the unknown that's holding me back. They arrived at a red light, and Mark turned to face her fully. I need to embrace that fear if I want to move forward. I've been so conditioned to avoid vulnerability, to wear armor. Elizabeth's heart swelled with recognition. It was the armor that often prevented real connection. And armor can weigh you down, she stated, her tone resonating with understanding. You're a leader in a realm where vulnerability might seem like a weakness, but it can be a source of strength. It's what will forge authenticity in our collaborative effort. The light turned green, and Mark's foot pressed the accelerator gently. You're right. I've kept myself isolated within my corporate identity, while I see you embracing challenges head-on. I admire that. The compliment sparked warmth within her, illuminating the path they could carve together. Just as your corporate identity has defined your professional realm, mine has shaped my resilience. Our experiences can synergize into something impactful. But we need to be willing to peel back those layers. Okay, what's the first step? Mark asked, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. Elizabeth felt the knot in her stomach loosen, replaced by rising excitement. Let's create a blueprint. If we start to shape our vision, it will help ground our fears into actionable steps. We can identify resources, set objectives, and create strategies to push past those fears. I like that approach, Mark replied, newfound enthusiasm threading through his words. It's proactive. I've just been fixating too much on the potential pitfalls instead of looking for opportunities. Exactly, Elizabeth affirmed, her resolve crystallizing. Let's flip the narrative. Instead of asking what could go wrong, let's focus on what could go right. A palpable sense of momentum surged between them, energizing the very air in the car. They were no longer two separate entities, but partners on the precipice of a bold expedition. But as ideas flowed, apprehensions lingered, teasing the edges of her mind. Elizabeth couldn't shake the feeling of impending challenge. Would they truly break the barriers set by their histories? Mark, Elizabeth said suddenly, a sense of urgency creeping into her voice. What if I told you that the closer we get, the more we need to confront the realities of our pasts? Would you be prepared to open up fully? His expression faltered, a glimmer of apprehension surfacing again. Would they both muster the bravery required to explore the depths of their histories, stripping away the layers that could either empower or haunt them? With the destination looming ahead, both felt the real journey was just beginning. Would stepping into shared vulnerability be their greatest catalyst, or their greatest downfall? The sun hung low in the sky as they arrived at an unassuming cafe, the modest exterior hiding the promise of warmth and connection. Elizabeth stepped out of the car, inhaling the sweet scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the cool autumn air. It was a transitional phase, much like the journey they were embarking on together. Mark followed, a thoughtful expression etched across his face. The act of externalizing their plans felt monumental, but the underlying emotional weight cast a shadow over their budding partnership. "Let us get coffee, then we can dive into that blueprint," he murmured, his tone more contemplative than confident. The gentle chime of the doorbell as they entered the cafe seemed to signal the start of something pivotal. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with conversations and the clinking of cups, yet for Elizabeth, it felt as if they were in their own bubble. She could sense the familiarity of anxiety creeping in as they settled at a small table near the window. Uncertainty loomed like a mist threatening to enshroud their aspirations. "Okay, how do we get started?" Mark queried, fiddling with the edge of the table. His posture was closed, and Elizabeth noted the instinctive retreat, a protective maneuver that often thwarted potential growth. "We identify our goals. Not merely what we want to achieve, but what we truly value," Elizabeth responded, keeping her voice poised. "Understanding that will guide every step we take." "Values," Mark echoed, his brow furrowing slightly as if the concept was foreign to him. "Isn't it a bit abstract?" She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "It's foundational. Without clarity on our values, every decision becomes more daunting. We must align our ambitions with who we are." There was a fervor in her heart, a deep conviction that this dialogue was essential for both of them. Mark's fingers stilled, and it was as if he was awakening to a realization. "You're right," he admitted, the vulnerability creeping back into his voice. "I often prioritize results over purpose. It's hard to lead with compassion when the bottom line looms so large." Elizabeth recognized the burden he carried, underscored by societal expectations. "Let us redefine success together, Mark. It doesn't need to be rigid. What if we measured our achievements based on our values and impact rather than just revenue?" He exhaled slowly, the tightness in his shoulders easing, if only slightly. "That idea is both frightening and liberating," he confessed. "It forces me to gut-check my motivations. What if I'm not skilled at that?" "I think you underestimate your abilities," she replied, her tone filled with encouragement. "You've led teams, navigated difficult decisions. Your experiences give you insight into the human element, even if you haven't recognized it." The waitress approached with their drinks, giving them a moment to reflect. As the steam from their mugs swirled upwards, Elizabeth's mind raced ahead to the potential breakthroughs resting in this pivotal conversation. "I've always been told vulnerability equals weakness, especially in leadership," Mark said. "But I see now that embracing it might unlock a deeper connection to myself and my team." "Exactly," she affirmed, her confidence bolstered by his reflections. "By allowing yourself to be real, you create an environment where others feel safe to do the same. It fosters trust." The cafe's chatter began to fade, and the weight of their conversation heightened as clarity took hold. She sensed Mark's previous reluctance slipping away, replaced by a blend of resolve and determination. "What scares me most," he began, his voice softer, "is exposing my past failures. I've meticulously curated a persona, a brand. What if people see the cracks?" Elizabeth mirrored his honesty, sharing her own struggles. "I empathize. I've faced failure too, learning the hard way that it's part of growth. The fear of judgment often stifles progress. But what if we use those stories as the foundation of authenticity in our vision?" Using failure as a foundation, he seemed to digest this, and Elizabeth watched. As the flicker of hope ignited in his eyes. "We could create something truly impactful." "Yes, but it requires both of us to step outside our comfort zones. It might feel perilous, but that's where real growth happens," she insisted, the intensity of her voice urging them both forward. Mark leaned back, contemplative. "What's the next step then?" As she prepared to answer, a shadow of doubt crept in. "Unlocking that vulnerability might mean facing the hardest truths about ourselves. Are we ready for that?" The weight of uncharted territory loomed over them, signaling that the journey had just begun. But were they truly prepared to confront their pasts, or was the fear of what lay beneath too great to bear? As the steam from their mugs dissipated into the air, so too did the wall of apprehension Mark had built around himself. He seemed different now, alert, on the brink of transformation. Elizabeth felt a shift in the atmosphere between them. A silent pact was forming, one that tethered their ambitions to the vulnerability of truth. "Let us start by outlining what we hide behind our masks," Elizabeth proposed, her heart racing with anticipation. She had stripped her own facade for a fleeting moment, and the thought of Mark doing the same felt electrifying. "What stories do we carry that block our paths?" Mark's brow furrowed again, this time with deep contemplation. "I often think of that time I failed a crucial project. I was running late with deliverables, and my team was left scrambling. I've replayed that in my head countless times, thinking it defined my ability to lead." His vulnerability was palpable, and Elizabeth sensed a wave of relief rush over him as he spoke. "That's a turning point, not a definition," she interjected, eager to guide him. "What did you learn from that experience?" He chuckled ironically, a surprising note of warmth cutting through the tension. "Patience, I guess. An understanding that I can't do it all alone." He hesitated. "But what would my team think if I shared that? Would they still trust me?" "Their trust in you might deepen," she challenged. "You'd show them that even leaders are flawed. It's about authenticity. They may feel less isolated in their own struggles if you're willing to be raw and real." His fingers danced again over the table's surface as he considered her words. Elizabeth noted the fragility in his face, yet there was promise brewing within him, a seed of awareness. "I have a fear of being replaced. If I show weakness, what if someone else steps in?" "It's a logical fear rooted in the corporate fabric," she acknowledged. "But redefining vulnerability isn't about fostering weakness, it's about cultivating resilience." Each exchange felt like a layer pulled back, revealing deeper motivations. The cafe's ambient noise grew distant as their focus sharpened. "It's hard to turn vulnerability into strength," he admitted, his voice roughened with tension. "What if I fail again? Every stumble is a learning opportunity. It becomes a part of our foundation. Remember your story. Each failure you share adds a brick to the positive legacy you wish to create," she persisted, sensing a growing determination in him. Mark nodded, his body language evolving, his shoulders lifted slightly. "I'll need support. A network doesn't just form without honesty. You'll attract a team that values shared experiences instead of simply achieving results. Wouldn't that make you a stronger leader?" Elizabeth's words felt like a thread weaving them into a tapestry of mutual intention. A playful smile emerged on Mark's lips. "I suppose failure could lead to transformative connections." "Yes, and your genuine journey could inspire others to follow suit," she encouraged, drawing closer to the crux of their discussion. "Imagine your team feeling empowered to be real around you. What could that do for morale and productivity? What if I commit to being more open? Am I ready to deal with the fallout?" The seriousness in his tone struck Elizabeth like a jolt. "Just remember, authenticity invites understanding. It illuminates insecurities instead of hiding them. It's the core of our blueprint," she replied, her eyes unwavering. "Then let's commit," he said, brightening with resolve. "Let us create that blueprint. But what if it unearths more than we're ready for?" The question hung in the air between them, laden with unanswerable implications. Elizabeth felt both exhilarated and apprehensive about the path that lay ahead. They were on the verge of revealing personal truths that could transform both their lives and careers, but then a haunting night stretched out in her mind an unresolved situation she had tucked away, one that raised deeper questions about integrity and accountability. Could she be as brave as she expected Mark to be? If they were to embrace their vulnerabilities, was she prepared to confront her own? "Your past and mine are intertwined now," she whispered, her resolve rippling like a pebble cast into still waters. "What will we uncover in this journey?" Mark's eyes held a searching quality, mirroring her internal conflict, as the future awaited, a blank canvas yearning for bold strokes of courage and authenticity. The following morning, Mark arrived at the office earlier than usual. The sun hadn't yet risen, and the dim glow of the city lights cast a surreal ambience over the empty hallways. Each step echoed in the stillness, reflecting his mixed emotions. He knew today would be pivotal, a test of his commitment to change. As he settled into his office, Mark pulled out his notebook, running his fingers over the pages filled with scattered ideas and sketches of the blueprint he and Elizabeth had discussed. There was a sense of urgency propelling him forward, but as he stared at the blank sheets, doubt seeped in like a creeping shadow. What if he was unprepared for the unearthing? What if the risk of vulnerability didn't yield the validation he sought? He took a deep breath and began writing. I am not just a leader, I am a human who struggles just like my team. As the words took form, a small flicker of resolve ignited within him. Mark's thoughts swirled around the idea of connecting with his employees on a deeper level. What would it mean to share not just failures but also victories, no matter how small? The morning meeting loomed ahead, a weekly ritual he had transformed into a well-rehearsed presentation. Yet today would be different. This wouldn't be just about numbers or projections, it would be about shared experiences about humanity. As he entered the conference room, he scanned the familiar faces around the table. He could see students of the corporate ladder, all eager for the performance stats and growth charts he usually laid out. But today, instead of the polished executive demeanor he usually donned, he felt the weight of responsibility for their growth too. Good morning, everyone. He began, injecting an uncharacteristic softness into his voice. An awkward silence punctuated his greeting, the collective confusion palpable. I know this isn't typically how we start our meetings, but there is something I need to share. A few puzzled glances exchanged, but curiosity flickered in their eyes. Mark took a breath, almost tasting the tension, and decided to forge ahead. I want to talk about failure today, not just those we encounter in our projects, but the personal struggles we've all faced. As he spoke, he shared the story of the project that haunted him, the sleepless nights and the fear of disappointing his team. Each word rippled through the room, breaking through the walls of professionalism. An unforeseen vulnerability swelled within him, creating an atmosphere that encouraged others to share too. Thank you for your honesty, Mark, one of his team members said cautiously. It's refreshing to hear our leader admit shortcomings. I think we're all too scared to talk about the pressures we face. The floodgates opened. Team members began recounting their struggles, moments of self-doubt, project failures, and the fear of inadequacy. Their confessions knitted them closer together, transforming the meeting from a mundane recap into a sanctuary of shared humanity. Mark sat back, absorbing the waves of authenticity washing over the room. They were beginning to form the cohesive team he had long envisioned, not just through strategies and goals, but through mutual understanding and acceptance. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But as he embraced this newfound culture of openness, a flicker of concern loomed in the corner of his mind. As they shared, did he dare delve deeper into his own hidden truths? Could he disclose the more profound insecurities that haunted him? The reality of his past decisions loomed sharply, a specter he had successfully avoided until now, the meeting wrapped with a sense of camaraderie. However, as his team filed out, a single thought nagged at Mark. Would this authenticity disrupt the delicate balance he had cultivated in his leadership, or could it serve as the catalyst for genuine transformation? The moment lingered, charged with possibility. Mark's resolve solidified, yet uncertainty knotted in his chest. He was on the brink of something greater, but how far could he push himself before? Unraveling, the door swung closed, but as he peered through the glass, a flicker of hesitation crossed his mind. What pieces of himself would he ultimately reveal, and were the risks worth the anticipated rewards? Crossing the threshold of self-disclosure could redefine not just his professional landscape but his personal legacy. The stakes had never been higher, and uncertainty loomed ahead like a storm. What if today was just the first step into the deep waters of exposure, and what awaited him on the other side? The next few days seemed like a blur as Mark wrestled with the revelations sparked during that fateful meeting. Each time he passed by the conference room, he could still feel the electric energy lingering in the air, a stark contrast to his growing apprehension. Those moments of shared vulnerability had been cathartic, yet the weight of maintaining that authenticity hung heavy over him. Back in his office, Mark grappled with the impact of his newfound honesty. He felt both liberated and exposed, caught in a dance between hope and fear. Perhaps it was time to confront the deeper layers of his own past, a history that he had kept buried to maintain a facade of infallibility. Could he stomach sharing the fractures of his experience without crumbling under the weight of judgment? On the fourth day after the meeting, Mark decided to schedule a one-on-one session with each of his departmental leads, a format he envisioned as an intimate extension of the team's new living culture. He believed that if he could cultivate trust on a smaller scale, it would fortify the foundation laid in the larger group. Yet just the thought of laying bare his deeper truths sent spikes of anxiety through him. His discussions began smoothly. He listened intently to his team's challenges and aspirations, each sentiment echoing the camaraderie that had begun to solidify. Yet, as the final meeting approached, the familiar yet nauseating sensation of doubt wormed its way back. He felt an insistent voice imploring him to pull back, to lean into the safe confines of his executive mask instead of fully engaging in the risky realm of honesty. Sitting in front of Maria, the head of marketing, he sensed a shift within himself. It felt particularly important to unearth something meaningful during this session. After listening to her thoughts and encouraging her insights, a flicker of resolve sparked in Mark. He leaned in closer and asked, "What do you think about true leadership?" Maria paused, the question hanging in the air. "I think it's about being real, Mark. Your authenticity has inspired us. But I wonder if we're allowed to be completely honest with you." His heart quickened at the weight of those words. "What do you mean?" "It's just that I've always respected your authority," she continued slowly, "but there's a pressure to appear unshakable in front of you. If we're becoming a more open team, doesn't that include you too?" There it was, an invitation to step back into the deep waters he had just begun to wade through. With every fiber in him shouting to pull the brakes, he felt something shift. Perhaps that hesitation was also part of the journey. "I guess it's time I share something with you," he began, voice steadying. "There was a pivotal moment in my career, one that nearly broke everything I've built. I made a decision that still keeps me awake some nights." Mark recounted a pivotal misstep, how he had approved a direction for a product without fully assessing the implications, leading his previous company to a costly failure. The waste wasn't just financial, it had cost jobs, and the ripple effects spiraled into people's lives. As those words tumbled from his lips, he felt an unfamiliar lightness, like peeling away layers that once weighed him down. Maria's eyes widened at his vulnerability. "I had no idea," she replied. "I thought it was just me who carried the weight of our decisions." As they continued that session, his heart swelling with the shared honesty, Mark felt the transformation taking place not just within himself, but in the rapport blossoming between them. That moment of connection was fleeting yet monumental, a sliver of what could be if he allowed himself to open the path even further. However, as Mark prepared to summarize their meeting, he felt anxiety examine new territory on the horizon. He had only scratched the surface. Sharing this isolated moment had revealed more than a story, it had revealed his own need for deeper connection, burrowing toward the vulnerabilities he had yet to confront. Just then, a shadow flickered at the corner of his desk. He looked up to see Elizabeth. She'd been silent observer throughout his leadership journey, yet it was her piercing gaze that now intrigued and terrified him. "The time had come to face," she said softly, a knowing smile flickering on her lips, "the pieces of yourself you've avoided. Are you ready to dive in with me?" As the question hung thick and heavy between them, Mark felt the stakes heighten. There was no turning back now. This was his chance to confront the echoes of his past. But what awaited him beyond the fragile walls he built? What would it mean to reveal his truth? As the sun bathed the office in a warm glow, both Mark and Elizabeth stood at the cusp of a transformative journey. Weeks of intense dialogue had forged an unbreakable bond between them, one rooted in vulnerability and mutual understanding. Elizabeth had been stepping into her power with each revelation, and Mark had begun to uncover the layers of who he was beneath the executive persona. The fear that had clouded Mark's mind began to recede, replaced by a palpable excitement for what lay ahead. Now, standing together in the office, they sketched the outline of their ambitious project, a new initiative focused on mental health and well-being in the workplace. It was both personal and professional, drawing from Elizabeth's experiences as a nurse and Mark's revelations about leadership. This endeavor was not just about changing corporate culture, it was about providing a platform for voices like Elizabeth's, galvanizing empathy and understanding across the corporate landscape. It felt exhilarating, yet the implications loomed large. "What we're doing here carries weight, Mark," Elizabeth said, her gaze intent. "This isn't just a business project, it's an opportunity to empower others. Can we truly enact change?" Mark nodded, feeling a sense of confidence bloom within him. "We can. This is a chance to redefine success, to center on the human experience. We'll share our stories and invite others to do the same." That evening, as they worked late into the night, brainstorming ideas, soaking in coffee and passion, Mark felt a sense of purpose settle firmly in his heart. He transformed from just a CEO into a storyteller, preparing to lay bare not only the company's vision but his own vulnerabilities to the world. Each word he typed felt like a step away from the shadows he had long resided in. Over the next weeks, they launched a campaign that encouraged employees to share their own narratives about struggles, failures, and triumphs. Mark stood in front of his team on the launch day, addressing them with a newfound authenticity. "I used to believe that showing vulnerability equated to weakness. This initiative is for all of us who carry invisible burdens," he declared, his voice steady but filled with emotion. As he spoke, he shared not just company goals but parts of his past, his missteps and the lessons that arose from them. When he finished, a heavy silence filled the room, followed by a powerful wave of applause. It was a cathartic experience, not just for Mark, but for the entire team, who felt a sense of relief and connection. Elizabeth's heart swelled with pride. She had watched Mark evolve from a corporate leader into an inspiration. Hers was a voice deeply rooted in service, and together, they had catalyzed a wave of change. The initiative bridged the divide Mark had once perpetuated, fostering culture and understanding while giving a platform to those who felt unheard. As the weeks turned into months, the impact of their initiative rippled outwards. Employees began to engage openly and genuinely, sharing struggles and support, creating a sanctuary of empathy and understanding in the workplace. Their impact caught the attention of industry influencers, prompting invitations to speak at conferences and share their insights. Recognition soon flowed, and a prestigious award for workplace innovation was bestowed upon them, acknowledging not just their project but the journey of growth they had undertaken. Mark stood on the stage, receiving the award, his heart full. "This journey began in a moment of vulnerability," he said, glancing at Elizabeth, who stood beside him, smiling with pride. "It reminded me that leadership is not about authority. It's about compassion, shared experience, and the courage to embrace connection." The spotlight felt warm, but more importantly, he felt at peace, knowing the path he had chosen not only changed his own life but also enriched the lives of those around him. Elizabeth felt fulfilled too, a sense of triumph for every individual who saw their own struggles reflected in their initiative. As their venture expanded, so did their aspirations. They began training future leaders in empathy-driven management, revealing how vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but the key to enduring strength. The success was not just a testament to their professional acumen but a reflection of their individual growth. Mark had proven that true leadership comes from shared experiences and authenticity, while Elizabeth had emerged as a beacon of hope and resilience, carving out a narrative that defied the status quo. In the years that followed, they continued to empower individuals, and Mark and Elizabeth had turned their experiences into a legacy that would inspire generations. They had forged autonomy and pride in their vulnerabilities, emerging not just as business partners but as changemakers rooted in human connection. For both, the final resolution lay not only in their professional achievements but in their own personal journeys. Mark had found the courage to always embrace his true self, and Elizabeth had conquered the silence she once felt defined her existence. In this, they forged ahead, as allies in the pursuit of empathy, armed with a mission to dismantle the silence of vulnerability and achieve true courage together. Now is the time to support this journey. Make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire you. Don't forget to leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your appreciation. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below, your insights matter, and please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful story of transformation.